You are listening to the Hammersley Brothers e-commerce podcast. Like what you hear and want to take the shortcut on your e-commerce growth? Join hundreds of brands that work with us and head over to joinhb.com. That's joinhb.com and see how we can help you further. Join our members and smash your targets and unlock the profits within your e-commerce site. Good morning, Ian. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Morning, Mark. Yeah, I'm well.
Yeah,
I'm very well.
Good.
That's all I've got to say.
Yeah, you got me up very early for an interview, meeting, something. It was all very exciting.
What, like 8 o'clock in the morning? Wasn't that early?
Well, no, it was about 7 o'clock. It's hard at the moment because in my winter I am up late with all the UK calls. So I find you can either do one or the other. You can either get up really early or you can stay up really late. You can't do both. I used to be able to do both when I was younger. When I first moved to New Zealand, I would get up early, have a little sleep in the middle of the day, and then work late. But you can only do that until you're late 30s, I think. Or at least I could. Anyway, this isn't important information.
You told me you could have a quick podcast.
Quick. Let's get it go. So, what we're going to talk about today. So last week, we went through the 5 types of e-commerce business, and we actually got quite good feedback from it. We got some people emailing through and saying, I'm this type of business, and this is why I've struggled and all that kind of stuff. So I think it resonated. So, back in the day, we did the podcast series for the dominoes of an e-commerce sale, and we did the 5 sales people of e-commerce. So we'll probably go through in a series of podcasts now, going through each of the 5 in a little bit more detail and just talk about some success stories for each type. And I think that will give people a bit of a heads up on where they are. So I think that, yes, Ian?
Yeah, I was going to say before you launch into an example, I was thinking tonight, if you haven't heard us talking about the 5 e-commerce types of businesses, we'll run through them, what they are quickly now, just the names. Yeah. But as you start to understand, yeah, well, that's what I'm going to ask you. This is like I came up with the e-commerce 6 dominoes of conversion rates, how to improve your conversion rate through the 6 dominoes. And I used to ask you what they were, and you were like, "What? Is the 6? Is the 5?" I was like, "No, Mark, there's 6. There's 6 e-commerce dominoes." So I'm going to do the same thing. Because
clinical execution.
But what I was going to say is that when you have started to hear us talk about the 5 different types of e-commerce business, I promise you, it changes the way you think about e-commerce strategy. And every time you listen to anybody else on a podcast, on a YouTube video, on a webinar, a book, go to an event, as soon as you hear the 5 types of e-commerce business, you cannot unhear it. And anytime you're listening to anybody talking about e-commerce, you'll be saying to yourself, well, yeah, but that wouldn't work for this type of business, and that would only work for this type of e-commerce business, and it wouldn't work for that. It's quite enlightening, because all of those times where you hear these little snippets of information, you start to put into perspective of, well, which one of the 5 would it work? And it totally changes, and it makes everything make sense, and it becomes really obvious what doesn't work and what does work. So I think it's a really, really, really important thing to identify, is that there is not this one size fits all. And honestly, it makes everybody else who talking about e-commerce, who are not framing it in this way, sound like complete and utter numpties.
Sound like
you could erase that last word.
A bit like when you reviewed our own book on Amazon and said it was really good, and I was like, I just think your own book. Yeah.
It's so obvious.
It is a good framework.
It's so obvious that this ridiculous one size fits all philosophy is there in our industry, and you think it's worked for one e-commerce business, it's going to work for another e-commerce business, and it doesn't. And it's so goddamn clear. And obviously, our e-commerce industry now it's reached a level of maturity. It's not an immature startup business. We are 20 years in, And it's when the different models start to come out and become really, really clear. And this, I believe, is one of those examples for our own learning. That these 5 things are so clear that
we're using it internally to start conversations about, should we do this for this kind of company? We'll only do it for this type of business because X, Y, and Z. So let me go through the 5 types just as a recap, and then we're going to go through the first one in a little bit more detail today. Okay, number 1 is the compounding brand. So the compounding brand are brands that build long-term momentum through repeat purchases, strong retention, and loyalty. So like skincare, businesses, those kind of things, supplements. Then the next one, number 2, is the high-value one-timer. These brands sell products at a high price point, so like a high average order value. You're talking about luxury furniture, premium mountain bikes, those kind of things. Then you've got number 3, which is the volume retailer. These brands are on breadth and scale, so they tend to have a volume to get the kind of product margin up. So like Bedding Envy is a volume retailer in that case, so we have to get a certain amount of revenue before we can get the margins that we want. That would be like a clothes business, that would be a bedding business, that would be anybody who is kind of like a traditional retailer online. And then you've got the need-driven supplier. So that's number 4. They're functional brands selling products that solve a very specific need. Sometimes business to business. It's like you need some it's like dust spares for your just system in your factory, or car parts to fix your car. You only need them when you need them. And they tend to be very kind of like does what it says on your tin, on the tin kind of businesses. And then the 5th one is the seasonal specialist. So these brands do the bulk of the business during a narrow window, Christmas, summer, Mother's Day, back to school, and very much about cash flow and really fanning those peaks, and also having a strategy to reduce the loss during the off months as well. So you're not the profit you make during the peak doesn't get completely ruined in the off peak. So those are the 5 types, and today we're going to talk about the compounding brand and talk about some successful brands that we've scaled in that category. Anything you want to add there?
Yeah. No. That's great. Thank you very much for those. Yeah. So the compounding brand. So there was 4 that we've picked. So the 4 that were in our program.
And we're not going to mention names. We're just going to talk about what they sell and what they do, so we can be a bit freer with what we say. The people on our programs will know who they are, but I think that if we mention specific names, then we're going to have to hold back on what we say. So I think we'll just be a bit freer and give them a general, because how we'd scale that brand will be very similar to how we'd scale another one. So the first one is it's a brand selling other people's products, but those products tend to be ones that are repeatable over and over and over again.
Yeah, supplement. They supplement.
Yeah, supplements. So they're selling other people's supplements.
And they'll do 60 million this year, and they didn't exist 3 years ago. Right, 60 million pounds turnover. Yeah. Shopify online, 60 million. Second one is an American business that's gone from about 1 million to 7-ish million. American health.
That's in about
beauty,
2.5 years. That's done.
Yeah. So doing really well. The third one, and I'm gonna. There's. Let me just say the third one. The third one is a UK business, Shopify business online, gone from 1 million to 10. And next year they're going to shoot for 20 million turnover pounds. And they 2 years ago they were on 1 million. They'll do 20 million next year. Fourth one is a UK business that's been going for a long time, actually, probably about 10 years, but was sat on 2 million for a long time. And they'll now nudge probably about 6.5 million.
What's interesting about
18 months.
What's interesting about these ones is you can very clearly see that the volume, not the volume retailers, the compounding brands, they can scale very quickly. That is scaling. Probably the highest scaling brands we've got are the compounders, just because the numbers compound very quickly. However, the fourth one doesn't compound as quickly just because of the length of of what they're selling. Yeah. So we'll go into
there's
we'll go
lots
into that.
of repeat. Yeah, there's lots of repeat. It's like spare part type company, like replacement things like filters and stuff like that. Their repeat takes a lot longer than the others. But the philosophy is exactly the same actually. So these 4 businesses are 4 of many actually in the group, and we just picked and there's probably a couple of them I could pick in addition who are just starting out on the program and using this compounding model and actually are struggling slightly to understand what the simplicity of the model is and why it works, and resisting it slightly. But that's
why do you think that is? I think that's because you go first, but then I'll say why I think it's hard at the beginning.
I think they want to overcomplicate it. They want what I was going to say with these 4. And if you're a compounding business, so you're a business that sells, something that is almost on repeat, supplement, health, wellness, cosmetics, you all have something at your core in common. There's something that's really, really obvious about these businesses and how you scale. And anything that isn't focusing on these 2 things for a compounded business doesn't tend to move the needle as much. It's a waste of time. And these 4 all had the fact that they needed to recruit. I mean, when I say this, it sounds really obvious, but that mainly is they had to recruit new customers, and then they had to get the second sale quickly. So it was how do we recruit aggressively first time, and how do we make our profit on the second sale? Most of these businesses are pushing aggressively to do slightly better than break even, if not just nudge underneath, and knowing that they make profit on the second sale. And when you do the program, you'll understand what we mean by the margin calculator and how we put the numbers in, and it tells you what level you can recruit at. And you look at the profit velocity and you say, well, if we have a ROAS of this level, this is how much profit we'll make in a year's time. If we recruit at this level, this is how much profit. And so it's really nice. It's a really nice numbers game. And I think that the one that's just joined in the program, who we're going through the compounding model with, who's like, it's not working, Ian, I think is not understanding the simplicity of it all, and is overcomplicating it. And I think, to be honest, they're not spending enough money. That's really, we're showing them that,
they're hitting
that
their
they
numbers.
should be recruiting a new customer for a new customer ROAS of about 180. So for every pound, they need £1.80 back. They've got great margins and they've got great lifetime customer value. So they're refusing to go down below about 3. So they're getting about 3 times, and they could go much faster than a 1.8.
I think that if I'm doing quite a few of them now, because we've got quite a few people on the program who are scaling quite nicely. I think that the initial reluctance to it is if you've got an established brand that's doing, let's say, 2 million, and you start recruiting and you move your recruitment rows down to a low level, even a small, if a smaller increase in spend, it's hard to see the effect of that straight away, because you're effectively starting with a very small snowball within an established business. And so there's that lag between the spend and the kind of second sale and third sale and those kind of things that kind of come on. And it's more about sticking to the recruitment number, the overall ROAS number that you're trying to hit, and scaling to that. And, I think you're right. It is about keeping it super simple. Like, I was speaking to the guy that sells dog food last night, and he's like pretty much having a record month every month. And all he's doing is he's sticking to the numbers. He's just sticking to the recruitment number. He's sticking to the overall number that he wants to do, and he's adjusting his spend to that. And he's putting better ads in. Obviously, he's improving his site and those things as he goes. But it's just almost like looking at his numbers. It's like clockwork. It is like, it's like record month, record month, record month, record month. And it's not rocket science, that. I think you can, but just wait, if he would come along and he was already doing 4 million, it would have been much harder for him to see the effects of that extra spend and to see the kind of the snowball building.
I think what you're saying here is that if you have a business that has a bit of organic and you start doing paid, let's say you're spending £5,000 a month on paid. Let's say you're doing £1 million, you're only spending £5,000 a month. You've obviously got some organic, and then you go, I'm going to spend 10 grand. I've doubled my ad spend. Yet it hasn't doubled the new customer business, and I think that's kind of what you're saying. There's some
well, there's part of that as well, yeah. Because if you're getting lots from organic, then you're not going to double that. You're going to double this the paid customer recruitment, aren't you?
And that's but I think we're deviating, because that is not a problem with a compounding business. That's a problem with any of the five. But I wanted to go back to the core thing that we did for these the compounding business, these four that scaled really, really dramatic. I mean, they've done massively well. They're incredibly well. And if you think about there's four here that 3 years ago they were nothing. They were like $1 million a year. Less than that, $500,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean, these are the most exciting businesses. So hang on, these are the ones that you want to own.
Yeah, these are really exciting. Yeah, these are really exciting. The core that we did, just to get it right, was the first one is that we obviously knew, when I say this, it's incredibly easy to say this, but we knew the power. We had to recruit new customers. Now, for a lot of these businesses, we tweaked the offer. We did a specific recruitment offer. And so if you look at all of these ones that we looked at, they all had a strong recruitment device. So obviously we had the right ads and the right platform, but we had a recruitment. So the equivalent might be, what is the starter pack? What is the new customer deal, the pack, the multi-buy, the system? And we really pushed that and identified what that was. That was the key, because without that, sometimes you just can't scale, because you're throwing ads and you're putting all your products in your feed and it just doesn't work. So it was understanding what the new customer recruitment journey was, what the product was, what the offer architecture was, what the time element, and that's in the program. The second point of it was, and they all have compounding business all have this in common, that if you don't get the second sale quickly, you're buggered. The whole business model falls apart. It just doesn't work, because you're recruiting in some of these very, very, very close to break even, if not under. So if the second sale doesn't come, it doesn't work. If the second sale doesn't come, the third doesn't come, and that's an obvious one. The second sale is essentially saying you don't have any repeat. So if you have no repeat and you are recruiting at break even, you have no business. So that second point of it, and that's why I use a second sale as a key thing for the compounders, because if the chances of them buying a second time dramatically falls off a cliff if you don't hit them at the sweet spot. So understanding when they buy naturally is when you hit them. Yeah, and also if you can bring it forward. I think though, you'll do initial calculations based on the profile of a customer at the moment in the business. So you'll think, right, okay, the customer on average, they buy a second time after 60 days or whatever like this, or whatever it is, and there's this many people do this. Obviously, as you scale, you've got to make sure that profile stays the same. Otherwise, your initial calculations could be wrong, because you could be like, oh, these customers we're recruiting aren't buying again, and then the whole model falls apart. So it's kind of updating the model as you go as well. But again, very simply, you're just looking at customer cohort analysis and just seeing how those customers are maturing through the business. And often you can increase the lifetime customer value of the customers as you go, because you've never done it before. There are certain unique things that you can do with a compounding business to get the lifetime customer value massively higher. That is all unique. But I would say generally that it's typically quite competitive businesses. There's quite a lot of noise in their space. So when you come to your normally CAC, your cost of acquisition is actually quite aggressive. So when you come to the second sale, you go, well, I either give this money back to Meta and Google to recruit another new person, or I can give some of it to my customer as a loyalty. I maybe half of it, and fantastic. Why? Why not do that? And so there's almost you can start to self-fund it, and you can become profitable really quickly and grow it at the same time if you get the model right.
Just summing up for the compounders is effectively it's keeping it simple, keeping your numbers very simple, understanding what you can afford to recruit a customer, how much that customer is worth to you over time, and monitoring that live, making sure that's going, and then just effectively keeping that beating that drum and just keeping it going all the time, and seeing it come through and trusting it.
Yeah, identifying when the second sale is going to happen. Knowing exactly what your procedure is to hit them with the second sale. When, how, what's the second sale offer? Throw the kitchen sink at them. And
I think what it's forced us to do is we've got playbooks for that first offer for all these types of businesses. We've got playbooks for creating that offer for the first time customer offer. We've got different ads that work for that first time offer across Google, and we've got ads across Meta and different places like that. And then we've got specific playbooks for bringing that second sale. First of all, bringing it slightly earlier and also making it bigger to improve those things over time. And all that's we're doing. We're just improving that first time customer offer, and we've got lots of examples of doing that. And then we've got lots of examples of doing the second thing really, really well. And we just keep that simple. That's as simple as we go. We're not trying to do anything crazy.
They are great. They are great businesses. And I think I sort of summarize is that the compounding business model, they don't change depending on whether or not you're doing 50k a month or 2 million a month. They're pretty similar. In fact, it becomes easier when you get bigger because you've got more and more trust and credibility. But they are at the core. And so I think that's another distinction of why the 5 types of e-commerce business works really well, because it isn't actually necessarily a size thing. If you're doing 50k, you have to work differently to 1 million a month.
Yeah,
that's wrong. It's wrong.
It just depends on how big your TAM is, doesn't it? Just how big the TAM is.
TAM. You just like to throw these acronyms in there because that I don't know what TAM is.
No, because that's what we've been talking to the people we're working with, our coach. They keep saying TAM, which is the total addressable market. I just thought I'd throw it in there to see whether you'd picked it up as well as me. You'd be like, yeah, come on, Mark. You've got such a huge TAM.
You'd be pleased to know that I've reached the level in my career where I'm quite happy to say, what the hell is a thing? Yeah, a TAM.
A TAM.
That I don't mind.
So there you go. You learn something every day.
To nod.
Total addressable market. Now you can use it. You can the listeners to the podcast can just throw it into family dinners. And
there are other podcasts that they will deliberately use acronyms like this, knowing that people don't know what it is, and it gives them an air of authority in their mind that makes people think you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's all good.
Not the Hammersley brothers.
No.
Okay.
All right. Go and have a nice evening. What's left of it.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Cheerio. Bye, everyone.